Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Chargify webinar on version 2 of the public sign-up pages. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. If you could, please leave those to the end. We have a team of Chargify staff who will be happy to answer any questions you have. And in just a few moments, we are going to get started. Okay, let's get to it. So for over 7 years, Chargify has provided a seamless billing platform for merchants across the globe. And today we're happy to announce the release of our newly designed public sign-up pages. These are beautifully designed, mobile-friendly, and packed full of improvements that are proven to provide a better user experience and convert more of your customers. So in this webinar, we are going to explore the differences between the older classic version 1 public sign-up page and the newer modern version 2 of the public sign-up page. And we'll walk you through how to configure your settings in your account so you can get these pages up and running for your company in no time. So first, let's head over to the Settings tab in the Chargify app, and you can click Public Page Default Settings. A few of the new settings we've added, the first being Default Public Sign-up Page Version. And this setting will control all future sign-up pages you make. For instance, when you create a new product, this will determine what version that public sign-up page defaults to. So if you select Modern version 2, all new pages you create will default to the new version 2. We've also added a new section for CSS and JavaScript. So there'll still be version 1 for CSS and JavaScript, and now there's a new version 2. One important note is that if you have code that is written for version 1, there are new div IDs and new class names for version 2, so you may need to make some changes if necessary to make sure your code is compatible for those customizations. Next, let's head over to the Setup tab, and we'll look at creating a new product. At the bottom, there is a new thing here, create a modern version 2 public sign-up page. So that setting that we just looked at in the Settings tab that chooses the default setting, that controls this. So any product you create will default to that modern version 2 if you make that setting there. And additionally, you can go to Setup tab, Public Sign-up Pages, to look at how to create a public sign-up page for an existing product. You can set it to version 2. So if I choose example product as my existing product there, I can then create a second public sign-up page for this example product and set it to version 2 or version 1, depending on your preference. So now let's get to the fun stuff and look at these two side by side and compare the differences. So we have version 1 on the left, version 2 on the right. The first thing, and one of the biggest differences, is mobile responsiveness. So if you shrink this in your browser, nothing changes. The width actually sticks at 650 pixels. Now, if you come over to version 2, beautiful. Notice how it changes depending on the browser width. And this is good because it means that your customers can now check out on phones, tablets, and of course, laptops and desktops as they normally would. And the page will be responsive to that device. There's a nifty tool if you would like to test this out. You can Google Screenfly, and then you can actually take a link, drop it in here, and you can view the Chargify version 2 page on any device. So if you wanted to see what it would look like on an iPhone 6, there you have it. And you can do this on any device, any size in there. And so again, that's called Screenfly, free tool. Just copy paste that version 2 link in there and you can test that out. Another big difference is in terms of the components. So previously they were grouped together in this gray box, not the clearest layout of all the different components that you offer. But if you look at version 2, they're actually separated in a much cleaner fashion. It's much easier to follow each individual one. Another thing that I like personally, the on-off component. Previously you would just check a small box, click update totals, and that total would update there. Well, now with version 2, it's actually a lot easier. You just select it, much clearer, click Update Totals, and you'll notice that the total will update here on the right-hand side. It's a lot easier to follow, and this is another big thing that has changed. This plan summary, so in version 2 we call it plan summary, over here purchase summary. It's the same thing in terms of the line items, but essentially it's sticky with the page. So you notice that as I scroll down, as a customer, I don't lose view of what I'm paying for. And that's very important there. Whereas version 1, if you scroll down, it actually goes out of view. And so this is much nicer for the user experience overall, because obviously if you're a customer, you want to visualize and see that price at all times. Another big thing that has changed, and I really like this as well, let me place an order where I purposely miss some fields. And you'll see that the error messages are all grouped at the top. So if I'm a shopper and I'm checking out on this form, I now have to find which fields did I miss. It doesn't draw my attention to what I need to see. So let's go over to version 2 and do the same thing. You'll notice now that we have inline errors. So if I miss a field, I can instantly see. And this is really useful. So if you're a box a month company, if you have a customer who misses their shipping zip code, they'll know instantly what they missed. And this is really good because it's less friction now. They don't have to go searching for what they missed. And so this lets them fill out the form faster, which is good for, obviously, your conversion rates. Another thing that has changed as well, let me get rid of these errors here. The shipping information and billing address information. So you have a section here and a section here, and of course, depending on your product configuration, you can choose to show both addresses or one or none. But over here, we've added a nice little toggle for the address. So if you enter your shipping address in version 2, you can then default. It'll choose as a default to use the shipping address, but then you could click use a different billing address, and you could actually enter that there. So you notice that the billing address section doesn't even show unless you need to have it show. Over here, it would always show. So this is nice in terms of shrinking the information that your customer sees, so it simplifies the checkout experience. Additionally, there is improved CAPTCHA, and this will be available on both version 1 and version 2. We're all familiar with the very old 1990s version of CAPTCHA with the red box where you type in the address of the house or something like that. Now we take advantage of Google's reCAPTCHA. So you can click I am not a robot, follow the prompt, and let's see if I can not be a robot here. Perfect. And of course, this CAPTCHA is optional. You can remove this from the page if you would prefer not to have it. So now what I would like to do is share with you the actual form process and filling it out. I have a pre-filled version 1. So put my shipping address, basic information here, custom fields, and let's place the order with that. And then we'll look at the receipt page and then compare that to the new version 2. So here is version 1 receipt page. Okay. Now let's do this for version 2. We'll actually fill out the form together. So say I want to add that on-off component for $5. I'll apply a coupon. I love that. It's so clean. Fill out basic information here. And another nice thing here, we'll look at taxes. So I think there's a little delay just from the webinar here. There we go. Notice how it updates for taxes. This page is currently connected to our integration with Avalara, so it's recognizing city and zip code and then pulling that tax information from Avalara and then updating the totals there. If you're connected to the Chargify test gateway, we'll use the number 1 to simulate a successful transaction. And then here's where that shipping address and billing address comes into play. But I will just use my shipping address that I've already entered. And you'll also notice that the custom fields are laid out much cleaner. So this is good if you're box of the month, if you ask for t-shirt size or something like that, it's cleaner user experience overall. Let's place that order. Looks like I need to do that again there. Okay. Now look at that receipt page. Look at the big difference between the two. Not mobile responsive over on the left. Clearly mobile responsive on the right. And I think we can all agree that this is it's much more beautiful. Better user experience overall. And of course, if you were still using your own receipt or thank you page, you would just set that return URL for the given product within the Chargify app. So now that you've seen the two in action, let's go and look at one more setting in the app. And this will be the most common question, and a lot of you are probably wondering, I'm excited about version 2, how can I switch all my version 1s to version 2? So there are two ways to switch any existing pages that you have. First, you could do it on an individual basis. Under the Setup tab and then Public Signup Pages, you can click Edit on a given public signup page, and you can essentially toggle between the two. Choose the one that you want. Again, as a little disclaimer, if you have any CSS or JavaScript for version 1, the div classes have changed, so just keep that in mind. And you can bulk update layout of all of them at once. So if you have a lot of public signup pages and you wanted to just switch them over to version 2 all at once, you can go ahead and do that right there. Easy. So let's recap some of the highlights here. Version 2 was designed with a clean and modern layout. The improved display makes it easier for your customers to check out, and mobile responsiveness is huge, especially for B2C companies who have a lot of mobile shoppers visiting on their pages. The pages have been optimized for conversions based on research, and with the inline errors, they're designed to reduce user confusion, which is designed to decrease checkout abandonment, increase conversion rates, and therefore increase your revenue. There's an updated CAPTCHA as well with Google's reCAPTCHA. And another little gem to add here is that when your users are actually checking out on a mobile device like iPhone or Android, they can actually use a feature to scan their credit card information into the phone. So when they click that credit card field, their phone will prompt an option to scan the card, and it just improves the user experience overall. So that's it from V1 to V2. I'm sure that you guys have some questions, so please feel free to put those into the chat, and our staff will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I'll pull up some questions as well. And if you guys wanted to actually see anything, we can look at that as well. So there was one question, and it might have been grabbed already, but it said, does this affect the URL? And I think this is important to address to everyone. The URLs will remain the same. So if you already have these connected to, say, a pricing page on your website with those links already there, those won't change at all. Really great question. There was a question about address autocomplete. Your browser will have that by a default. So for instance, Google Chrome will take that right away. So if I go back to this page here, obviously the browser defaults there. See something like that, and then you could just choose that and it will pre-fill that information. So you'll have that, and I believe Firefox does that as well. I live in Chrome most of the time. And another tip as well, if you want to test these out in your site, One tip is to view these pages in either incognito or open in a different browser. So for security reasons, if you open the page in the same browser that your Chargify app is open in, it will log you out. So just a good friendly tip is to open it in a different one. You can see I do that with incognito here. So here's a good question. Ashley, your question here. Do you have an example of a product with multiple components? So we can look at this right here. This is one of each, and of course the pattern would continue if you were to add more and more of a given component type. And so those multiple components will all show up here at the top. And you also asked, can you create two separate pages with each component? It would depend on the layout of that. With the sign-up page, you're going to have all of these components grouped together, but of course you could make a separate page if necessary, but it would be for a different product. But within this page, it would just be all the components that you've assigned to this particular page are going to be here. And of course, you can pre-fill those if necessary. There's a lot of things. The functionality from version 1 can carry over to version 2 in terms of pre-populating components, etc. But overall, all the components are going to be grouped under the Configure Your Plan section. So Randy asked, we enter our subscriptions manually. Is there any effect on those? So if you are entering your subscriptions manually, for example, in the Chargify app itself, there will not be a difference. This is purely a change in how the customer experiences that customer-facing checkout when you link to these pages from your website. And another important thing to point out too, in terms of the functionality and in terms of how the pages work, largely the same. Mainly to note things like PCI compliance. Chargify, of course, PCI compliant level 1 entity. Same will be true for these version 2 pages because it's our servers. But if you are entering subscriptions manually in the app, will not be a difference because these are the customer-facing pages here. So here's a good question. How long do you plan to keep supporting classic V1 hosted pages? At this point in time, there's no reason that we're going to be phasing these out. That hasn't come up at all. I don't believe there are any plans. Right now, we want both of these to be available. So as a business owner, or if you're running the billing at the business you work for, you can choose which page you want, and so it can all be customized to you. I know that there are some merchants who have some deep customizations with version 1, and they may prefer to just keep those, and they can keep those. And so if they already have like a pre-built beautiful custom page, that's not going anywhere. Any other questions? Please feel free to list any and all. Sorry, I should read that first. Do you have any examples of some beautiful V2 pages, I assume customized ones. So I don't have any customized ones available yet, but I'm sure they will begin to trickle in as some awesome developers start making some customizations, and the more and more that our team starts to explore with making customizations on our own. This right now is the default layout, but you can of course add a background image, make it transparent so that background image shows through, change colors, change font styles with Google Fonts, etc. All that custom code. I'm sure as time we tend to update docs with some examples, and so I think that would definitely be useful if there were, as we get some beautiful examples, if we can put those in.
Got an example that I can show.
Oh, you do? That's perfect.
Yeah, so give me 1 sec. I'm grabbing it right now.
So William asked, can you just put the referral code in the field instead of using the URL with referral code? So to make sure I understand, if you were looking to essentially pre-populate a referral code without using the URL to pre-populate, you could accomplish that with some custom JavaScript that pre-fills this field with whatever the given code is. Just be something like where you take the input, use some JavaScript to say, okay, pre-fill some text snippet that represents that referral code, and then put it in there. And then that way you can pre-populate it without using the URL on the top.
Hey Matt, I sent you that URL for that page, so you should be able to display that for everyone.
Perfect. Okay. So this is kind of an example of how you can take the different colors, make it how you want, and also with background images, font styles, etc. With the custom CSS and JavaScript, literally anything becomes possible. So we've seen on the version 1 side some of the most beautiful pages from some extremely talented developers from different merchants who are using Chargify, and you can take that same development principles and carry that over to version 2, so you can make it appear and feel however you would like to make sure that everything is branded properly for your business. So here's a great question from Tristan here about the wording particular, and I've definitely heard things like this before, where you have something like billing zip code, get that here. But then in other countries, you might want to call that a postal code. You can use JavaScript snippets. It would be the same strategy that you would use in version 1, and you can carry that over to version 2, where you can take any language from any of these field titles and you can change them to say whatever's necessary to make it more compatible with your international customer base. So if you need to call this postal code, you can definitely do that. Let me see if I can, I think in our help docs, here we go. Language translations. So this would be the approach to take. little JavaScript snippets. And I'll put that in the little chat section if you want to just grab that link from there. Um, and then the div classes, I'd have to review that documentation. Those div classes might be version 1 only. I know we're working on adding things for version 2 to show some of the div classes, but that's the general best practice. The little JavaScript snippets that will change things like billing zip code to postal code. Any other questions? Anything you're curious about? Anything at all?
So I'd just like to add one more thing. We would like to do some more digging into how these pages help you as merchants. We know that there are various different industry types that we cater to. So we would love it if you would allow us to track the conversions on your page, and hopefully that'll give you some additional insight with your business as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, please write us in at support@chargify.com, and we'd be more than happy to set that up for you.
So here's a good question about iframes, and this is important. With iframes in the public sign-up page, you can definitely use it. So we've seen cases with version 1, and you could do the same thing for version 2, where you essentially, perhaps you make the background all white because maybe the background of your in-app section for billing is white, and so then it will feel like it's essentially embedded with an iframe in your app. So it's important to note that you can definitely do that. The security is still there, the PCI compliance is still there. Um, the difference here is that there are rare occasions when, for a particular reason, an iframe may not work perfectly. The reason is because Chargify will actually use a cookie in the page to help with the functionality of the page, and so there are some browsers that block those cookies. So there are very rare occasions when an iframe won't work, but most of the time they will. So we actively provide a disclaimer about this in our documentation. In summary, yes, go ahead and use an iframe embedded in your app. All of the security is there, and you should be all set in that regard. You can also do the same for self-service pages as well. So really great question about iframes there. Any other questions? Feel free. we'll leave the floor open for a little while longer to see if any additional questions come in. If you have all the information you need and you wanted to head out, please feel free, and thanks for coming. We really appreciate your time. And again, we'll leave the floor open just in case there's any questions that anyone still wants to ask. Great, thanks for clarifying, Mike. Yeah, with a native application, it's going to be API-based that is needed. One of our developers is going to provide some additional information in that regard. And Edwin, it would be same any desktop app. It's going to be API based that is necessary, and we'll have our developer send that same information over to you so you have that available. Hey Shane, this is a great question. To test your existing V1 code with V2, I would recommend creating a test site in your Chargify account, and you could just clone your existing site. So if you went to the main, if you look at the screen here, if you went to your main sites page, I have a lot of them for testing. You can click clone on one of them, most likely your production. That will then create essentially a replica of your site, but in test mode, and then that way you can fiddle around with design, etc., without worrying about affecting your production environment. Yes, absolutely, Cameron. There will be a recording. It's been going this whole time, and we will make that available so you can definitely check out the video. Thanks for asking. Okay, looks like that's a wrap. Thanks for coming. We definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch the demo and learn about the new version 2 pages. We appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. And of course, if you have any additional questions as you explore further, you can always reach out to us, support@chargify.com. Thanks again.